It was supposed to be a normal Sunday lunch. Just the usual suspects, me, my parents, and my older brother, Graham. We were all crammed into my parents' too-small dining room, with Mom serving her overcooked roast and pretending we were a perfect family, even though we hadn't been one in years. The table was set like it always was when guests were expected: cloth napkins, wine glasses no one used, and the fake smile my mother reserved for social occasions. Except today, the guest of honor wasn't some distant aunt. It was Graham and his problems. I'm Elliot, 34, software consultant, single dad to a 10-year-old boy named Henry, and apparently the financial lifeboat of the family. I live in the suburbs about 45 minutes from my parents, own my home outright, paid it off 2 years ago, and I've been working remotely ever since the pandemic hit. My job pays well, and I've always been responsible with money. Not flashy, not wasteful, just smart. I thought that would earn respect, or at least space. Graham, on the other hand, he's 38, hasn't held down a steady job in over a decade, and still thinks of himself as too good for entry-level work. He studied music production in college, then tried to become a DJ, then moved on to some half-baked startup idea involving NFTs, then a crypto newsletter that he claimed had a few thousand followers. And now? Now he was unemployed. Again. I knew something was coming the second I walked into the house. Mom had that tight-lipped smile she gets when she's rehearsed something in her head 10 times and thinks it's going to sound natural. Dad was unusually quiet, and Graham was already at the table. That was the first red flag. Graham is never early. We went through the small talk. Work, the weather, how Henry was doing in school. I answered politely, letting the conversation drift past me like it always does. Mom served the roast. Graham made some offhand joke about the gravy being edible this time, and I chuckled just to keep things smooth. But then, right as I was cutting into the meat, Mom put down her fork and dabbed at her lips with her napkin like she was about to deliver a speech. "So," she said, in that tone that meant brace yourself, "Graham's had a bit of bad luck at work." I didn't even look up. Again, she ignored me. His company downsized, and it was completely unexpected. They let go of a lot of very talented people. I raised an eyebrow. Was this the marketing gig at the app company, or the crypto thing? "Elliot," she snapped, "this isn't the time for sarcasm." "It's not sarcasm. I literally don't remember which job he had this week." Dad cut in, voice low but stern. "Your brother is going through a tough time. We're a family. We support each other." "I've been supporting this family since I was 20, I muttered. Mom forged ahead, clearly on script. "Graham's rent is due next week. And with the economy being what it is, we thought it would make the most sense if you helped cover his bills for a while, just until he's back on his feet." I slowly put my fork down. "I'm sorry." "What?" She smiled. "You've got the house, the job, the savings, and you're always saying how Henry doesn't need much. You live comfortably. And because of that," I said slowly, "you think I should just what? Pay my 38-year-old brother's rent." Dad chimed in again. "Family helps family. No complaints." There was a long silence. I could feel the muscles in my jaw tightening. I looked over at Graham, who had the audacity to shrug. "It's not forever, bro. Just a few months." "You've said that before," I said. "Every time you crash and burn, it's just a few months. And then it turns into a year. And then I'm footing the bill for your bad decisions while you're playing Xbox in your underwear." Graham laughed. "You make it sound like I'm lazy. You know how hard it is to get a job right now? Especially with my skills." "What skills?" Mom gasped. "Elliot." "What?" I'm genuinely asking. What marketable skills does Graham have that would justify me taking money away from my son's college fund so he can pretend to look for work? That's when Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. You will help your brother. We've done so much for you." "Really?" I cut him off. "You mean like when you told me I had to take out loans for college because there wasn't enough saved? Or when you said I couldn't move back home after my divorce because you were too old to deal with a kid in the house? You mean that kind of support?" Mom stood up. "That's in the past." "Yeah, it is. And I got through it. Without help." Graham leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Man, you've always had a martyr complex. Maybe if you weren't such a tightwad." That's when I stood up. Calmly, deliberately. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and came back to the table. I took a slow sip, let the heat sting my tongue a little, then looked directly at my parents. "Well, if we're playing the family helps family game, I guess it's your turn to help him." Mom blinked. "What does that mean?" I'm selling my house. Dad frowned. What? What? Because I'm done being the safety net. If Graham needs a place to live, let him move in here. With you too. You can feed him, pay his bills, and listen to his excuses. You seem to think he's so talented. Let him perform at family dinners. That's ridiculous, Mom said sharply. You can't just. I can. And I will. The paperwork's already in progress. It wasn't. Not yet, but they didn't know that. The room went dead quiet. Graham's smirk disappeared. Dad looked like he was about to say something, but didn't. Mom sat down slowly, her hands trembling just slightly. You don't mean that, she said. I didn't respond. Not yet. But I meant every single word. And that was only the beginning. They didn't take me seriously at first. Mom called later that evening. Her voice syrupy, sweet, like she thought she could guilt me into walking it back. I know you said some things in the heat of the moment, Elliot, she began. But this family needs you. We've always needed you. She emphasized always, like it was a compliment. Like being the one they relied on without hesitation was some badge of honor I should wear proudly. I wasn't joking, I told her. I'm not bailing Graham out again. But honey, what about Henry? Do you really want him uprooted because of this petty spat? And there it was, the card they always played. Henry, my son, my pride, my tether to reality when everything else felt like it was crumbling. I'd raised him mostly alone since his mother left when he was 5. She moved to California for work, and we hadn't seen her since. I never complained, never missed child support payments, never asked for a handout, even when I was eating ramen 3 nights a week to make rent. And my parents? They visited once a month, brought him a toy, then left like they were doing us some grand favor. So when Mom tried to make it sound like I was harming him by standing up for myself, something inside me snapped. You don't get to talk about Henry, I said coldly. He's the only reason I haven't cut all ties with you. She went quiet for a second. Then the tone changed. You've become bitter, Elliot. Cold. You used to be so respectful, so helpful. We didn't raise you to be this selfish. No, I said. You raised me to clean up your messes, to play parent to your other child, to smile and nod while you praised him for doing the bare minimum, and punished me for succeeding without you. Click. She hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time, heart pounding harder than I expected. Not from anger, from release. But that was only the first shot. What followed was 3 weeks of silent war. My parents stopped calling. Graham sent me a few half-hearted texts asking if I was still mad. I didn't reply, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. I focused on work, took Henry to a museum, helped him with his science project. We started playing chess at night, and he was getting weirdly good at it, like suspiciously fast for a 10-year-old. The house felt peaceful, until one Wednesday morning, around 11 a.m., I got a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Riley. Elliot, honey, are you moving? Not yet. What? Well, there's a truck in your driveway. Couple of men are carrying boxes inside. Thought maybe you were renting it out. My stomach dropped. I didn't have anyone scheduled for anything. No movers, no deliveries, no maintenance. I grabbed my keys, told work I had an emergency, and drove home like a man possessed. When I pulled up, there was indeed a moving truck in my driveway. 2 guys in blue shirts were carrying in boxes. One of them looked up and nodded at me casually. Hey, you Elliot? Yeah. He checked a clipboard. We're just dropping these off for your brother. Said he's staying here temporarily. I blinked. Excuse me. As if summoned, Graham stepped out of my front door, with a smug grin and a can of soda in hand. Hey, bro, chill. It's just a couple things. I stood there stunned. How did you get in? Mom had a spare key. Said you wouldn't mind if I crashed for a bit. I'll be out before the weekend. I walked past him into my house. The living room was already cluttered with boxes. My guest room door was open. His suitcase was on the bed. A duffel bag in the corner. One of my hoodies thrown on the chair. My safe space was being invaded. I turned back to him. Get out. Dude. Get out. I'm not trashing the place. I just need a few days to sort some things out. No. You don't get to sneak into my house and act like it's some favor. You didn't even ask. He scoffed. Because you would have said no. You're damn right I would have. He raised his hands. Fine. I'll leave. Just give me until tomorrow. But I didn't trust him. I called a locksmith that afternoon and had the locks changed while Graham sat outside pouting on the curb, calling Mom to tattle on me like we were kids again. She showed up an hour later, screaming at me in the driveway about betraying the family. I closed the door in her face. It felt good. But things escalated again the next week. Henry came home from school looking confused. Grandma picked me up today. I blinked. She what? Yeah. She said you were working late and asked the school office to release me to her. I thought you told them only you were allowed to do that. I had. I absolutely had. I called the school immediately, demanding to know what happened. They said Mrs. Ashcroft, the secretary, had assumed I gave permission because it's his grandmother, right? I lost it. Politely. Professionally. But firmly. That night, I sat Henry down and explained boundaries. He's smart, he got it. But it shook me, not just that my parents had crossed the line, but that they used my child to manipulate the situation. I sent a formal email to the school the next day, making it crystal clear. Only I had permission to pick Henry up. No one else. No exceptions. Then I called my lawyer. I didn't tell anyone in my family about that part. Not yet. I wanted them to think I was still on the defensive. But it wasn't over. 2 days later, I got a notice from my bank. A wire transfer had been attempted from my checking account for $4,200. Flagged. Blocked. Thank God. I checked the login records. The attempt had come from an IP address registered to my parents' address. That was the moment. That was the exact second I knew this wasn't just favoritism anymore. This wasn't just enabling. It was betrayal. They'd given Graham my spare key, let him break into my home, tried to manipulate my son. And now, they were actively trying to steal from me. I didn't call. I didn't yell. I went silent. Which, for someone like me, is when you should really start to worry. The next Sunday came and went. No lunch. No visit. No contact. Then Monday morning, I saw it. A post from Mom on Facebook. So proud of our son Graham for stepping up and helping with the family business during these hard times. True family supports each other. Unlike some people. The comments were full of sympathy. People offering support. One even called Graham an inspiration. And of course, Graham replied to everyone personally, playing the part like a Broadway actor. I didn't reply. I just kept collecting receipts, screenshots, bank statements, emails. And then I made a call. To my cousin Ava. Ava's a paralegal. Sharp as a whip. She doesn't like my parents much, hasn't spoken to them in years after some inheritance drama involving her side of the family. But she loves a good family scandal. I told her everything. Laid it all out. She paused at the end of the call and said, "You're not gonna like what I'm about to tell you." What? You know the house you live in? Yeah. Your parents technically still have a lien on it. My stomach dropped. What? They co-signed the original mortgage back when you bought it, right? Yeah, but I paid it off. Sure. But if they never formally removed their name from the deed, they could still technically interfere with the sale. Or worse. That's when I realized something terrifying. They weren't just invading my life out of desperation. They were playing a longer game. They wanted control. And they weren't going to stop until I had nothing left to fight with. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated how far I'd go to protect my son, and how quietly I could prepare a storm. The house felt colder after that. Not in a physical way, though I did start keeping the thermostat lower to save on bills, but in that quiet, psychological way you don't notice until you're walking through the hallway and feel something missing. Like the peace had been sucked out of it and replaced by tension that clung to the walls. Maybe it was the paranoia. Maybe it was knowing that the locks weren't enough, that my own parents had crossed a line so deep it made my skin crawl. I spent a lot of time just existing. Not really living, not yet. I still got up at 7, made Henry breakfast, helped him pack his bag. But I started drinking more coffee than usual. Let the dishes sit longer in the sink. I opened the same kitchen drawer 3 times in a row and forgot why I was even standing there. I'd catch myself staring at the wall above my desk during Zoom meetings, nodding along while my mind replayed every sentence my mother had said at that Sunday lunch. Every smug glance Graham gave me on my front porch. Every comment online. I was unraveling, slowly, and no one saw it happening. Except maybe Henry. One night, he came into my room after brushing his teeth, wearing that Batman t-shirt he'd been obsessed with for a year straight. He sat on the edge of my bed, fiddling with the drawstrings of his pajama pants. "Dad?" he asked, not quite looking at me. "Yeah, buddy. Are we okay?" It nearly broke me. "Of course," I said, trying to smile. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you've been sad. You used to sing when you made pancakes." I didn't realize I'd stopped. I hugged him tight that night, longer than usual, and promised myself I'd get us out of this mess. Not just the house, The entire trap. The emotional leash my family had kept around my neck for decades. But to do that, I had to start over, not from scratch, but from somewhere real. The first thing I did was pull every file I had from the day I bought the house. Mortgage records, deed transfers, emails from the bank. I stayed up till 2 a.m. some nights combing through scanned PDFs, looking for one thing: leverage. And I found it. A single email, dated 8 years ago, from my dad's account to our loan officer. In it, he said, and I quote, "We'd like our names removed from the title once Elliot's cleared the 5-year payment threshold." This was always meant to be his house. But they never followed through. Probably forgot. Or maybe they thought they'd always be part of it. That it was still their safety net, not mine. I forwarded the email to Ava the next day. She replied with one word: gold. Next came the financial lockdown. I changed every password I had. I enabled 2-factor authentication with a backup device Graham couldn't touch. I pulled Henry's college fund into a separate account under a new financial institution. I double-checked the title on my car, my insurance policies, even the utilities. I wanted no fingerprints on anything. Not theirs. Then, I opened a new savings account, one my parents couldn't track, because I knew from experience that if you mentioned a bank's name even once in passing, my mom could charm her way into accidentally learning more than she needed. She had a way with front desk clerks, like a nosy aunt who guilt people into oversharing. I started putting every extra cent into that new account. I stopped ordering takeout, canceled streaming services, cut my own hair. It was temporary. I just needed time. The fall didn't come in a single moment. It wasn't some huge breakdown in public or dramatic blowout. It was quieter than that, more private. It was waking up one morning and realizing I hadn't texted a single friend in 3 weeks. It was checking the fridge and realizing I'd eaten nothing but toast and eggs for 4 days straight, because grocery shopping felt like too much work. It was lying in bed at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was the crazy one. If maybe they were right. If maybe I was selfish, cold, ungrateful. And then thinking of Henry and snapping myself out of it. Because I couldn't afford to spiral. Not for long. The rebuild started with a single question: what do I actually want? Not what I was told to want. Not what would make Mom happy. Not what would keep Graham afloat. Me. The answer came slower than I expected. At first it was just peace, boundaries, a fresh start. But the more I sat with it, the more specific it became. I wanted to sell the house. Not because I was running away, but because I wanted the choice. Because for the first time, I wanted to live somewhere I owned fully, with no strings attached. So I called a realtor. Her name was Celeste. Mid-40s, sharp suit, firm handshake. She walked through the house with a clipboard and a laser pointer, talking about curb appeal and listing photos. I told her everything. Even the lien complication. Even the family drama. She nodded, unfazed. "You'd be surprised how many people sell homes to escape their relatives," she said with a smirk. She recommended a lawyer who specialized in resolving title complications. A week later, I was in his office, reviewing paperwork while Ava sat beside me like a hawk. We filed a petition to have the house deed corrected and the lien removed, citing the original email and years of financial proof. My parents were served paperwork, and for the first time in years, they called me. Not Mom. Not Dad. Graham. "Bro," he said, "you're being really messed up right now. You're dragging Mom and Dad into legal trouble? Over a house. Over rent." I didn't answer. "You're seriously doing this? After everything they've done for you? You mean like breaking into my house? Trying to take Henry from school behind my back? Or stealing from my account?" "That was Mom's idea," he blurted, then paused. "I mean, no one stole. You just admitted it." He hung up. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not this time. It felt good. The rebuild wasn't just legal or financial. It was mental. I started therapy again. I hadn't been since my divorce, but I found a great therapist named Joel who specialized in family trauma and boundary recovery. Every Thursday at 6 p.m., I sat on a video call and unpacked years of guilt and resentment I hadn't even known I was carrying. He said something that stuck with me. "You were raised to feel responsible for other people's comfort. Now you're learning it's okay to prioritize your own peace." And I was. I reconnected with friends. Started running again, even if it was just around the block with Henry on his bike beside me. I cooked more. Slept better. I even started a side project, an app for managing shared custody schedules. Nothing fancy. Just something to keep my mind working on building again instead of breaking. Henry noticed the change. "You're singing again," he said one morning as I flipped pancakes. "Guess I am. I like it better this way." "Me too, buddy. Me too." But I knew it wasn't over. The legal process had bought me time, but not victory. My parents had responded to the filing with their own lawyer, one I didn't recognize, but who clearly had been fed a version of the story where I was the villain. They claimed verbal agreements and mutual understanding, and even tried to paint me as emotionally unstable based on nothing but hearsay. It was frustrating, exhausting, but not surprising. What was surprising was when I got a knock on my door one Saturday afternoon. I opened it to find a manila envelope sitting on my doormat. Inside was a letter from my parents' lawyer, demanding immediate financial compensation for shared equity in the house, totaling $72,000. Or they would pursue a court injunction blocking the sale entirely. That was the moment everything stopped. The fall was done. I had hit the bottom. And now, finally, it was time to rise. But not in anger, not in chaos, in silence, in strategy, in control. And the plan I was about to set in motion would not just protect me and Henry. It would ensure they could never pull this kind of stunt again. Ever. The envelope sat on my kitchen table for 3 days. I didn't touch it after the first read. Didn't reread it. Didn't even look at it. But I didn't throw it away either. It sat there like a trophy, or maybe a threat. A final reminder that no matter how much I tried to live peacefully, my family had no intention of letting go. Not unless they were forced to. $72,000. That's what they wanted. For what? Signing a paper 10 years ago? For a name on a loan that I paid off entirely? For a house they had never maintained, never upgraded, never visited without judgment in their eyes. It was pure entitlement wrapped in legal jargon. I took a deep breath. Then I opened my laptop and started planning. The first thing I did was meet with Ava in person. We sat at a diner 2 towns over, somewhere neutral. She slid into the booth with a folder already in hand and a look that said she was more than ready to go to war. "I did some digging," she said, flipping open the folder. "That letter? It's a bluff." "How do you know?" "Because their claim hinges on something called implied equity. But there's no proof of joint ownership. No record of maintenance payments. Nothing but that one email where your dad literally said they intended the house to be yours. Plus, you've paid the taxes, the insurance, the repairs, everything. They've never even contributed a dime." She paused and smirked. I also looked up their lawyer. He's semi-retired and mostly handles neighbor disputes and small-time divorces. They're not going for the jugular, Elliot. They're flailing. I felt a flicker of hope. But hope wasn't enough. I needed certainty. "I want to go further," I said. "I don't just want to win. I want them exposed." Ava raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "I'm done playing defense. They dragged Henry into this. They tried to drain my accounts. They trespassed, they manipulated, and now they're trying to bleed me dry under the guise of family. I want a clean break, but I want it with consequences." Ava grinned. "Now you're speaking my language." Step 1 was the legal response. We drafted a counter letter. Calm, professional, lethal in its precision. "Dear Mr. Clark, we have reviewed your client's demand regarding Mr. Elliot Carpenter's property and find the claim both factually and legally baseless. Should your clients choose to pursue legal action, we are prepared to file a motion for a declaratory judgment confirming sole ownership, as well as a countersuit for harassment, defamation, and attempted fraud, supported by documented attempts at unauthorized access to Mr. Carpenter's property and finances. We strongly recommend your clients reconsider their position. Sincerely, Ava Delgado, legal consultant." We sent the letter by courier. Certified. Tracked. Signature required. Then we waited. But I wasn't idle. Step 2, reputation. I didn't blast anything online. That would have been too easy and too obvious. Instead, I focused on a few strategic contacts. One was Mrs. Jenkins, my old high school English teacher who now ran the community newsletter. She loved Henry, always asked about him when we crossed paths at the library or grocery store. When I told her my parents had tried to pull Henry out of school without my permission, her mouth dropped open. "They what?" "Yeah," said they were doing me a favor. Her lips pursed so tight they disappeared. "Well, that's going in the column." I raised an eyebrow. "What column?" "Oh, you'll see." 3 days later, an article appeared titled, "When Family Lines Are Crossed," a story every parent should hear. She didn't name names. But everyone in our town could connect the dots. Small towns remember things. And they talk. Especially when the subject has spent years pretending to be the moral compass of every church bake sale and town fundraiser. Within a week, my parents stopped showing up to their Wednesday night bridge club. Step 3. Financial insulation. I contacted a forensic accountant Ava recommended, a sharp woman named Lila with icy blue eyes and a no-nonsense voice. She combed through my accounts with surgical precision and created a report that mapped every financial transaction for the past decade. It clearly showed that I had funded the mortgage, paid the property taxes, the insurance, the plumbing upgrades, the new HVAC system, even the landscaping service. It also included flagged attempts to access my online banking from a device associated with Graham's previous IP address, pulled from a freelance login he'd used at a marketing agency 2 years prior. She cross-referenced the metadata with timestamps and locations. It was enough to prove attempted theft if this ever went to court. But we weren't done. Lila also helped me set up a financial firewall, restructured accounts, new institutions, even a trust fund under Henry's name that couldn't be touched without court approval. I had quietly, efficiently, made myself untouchable. Step 4. Emotional preparation. This was the hardest one. Because for all the legal armor and strategic moves, I was still their son. And somewhere, deep down, that part of me kept whispering, maybe this is fixable. Maybe they'll apologize. Maybe they'll realize what they've done. But therapy helped. Joel reminded me, week after week, you are not the villain in their story. You're just the first person who told them no. So I practiced. Practiced what I would say if they showed up again. Practiced how to keep calm if they cried or screamed or begged. Practiced how to close a door gently and walk away without guilt. It took time. But one day, I walked past the photo on my mantle. Our old family photo, taken in a studio when I was 15, and instead of nostalgia, I felt distance. Not hate, just absence. And it felt like freedom. Then came the opportunity. I got a call from a local developer. He was scouting properties for a new residential project. He'd seen the listing Celeste posted and wanted to make a cash offer. Above market value. I could have jumped at it. But I had one condition. I want to retain a copy of the security footage. He blinked. I okay? Sure. And I want you to give me 48 hours notice before you do any inspections. No early visits. No exceptions. He agreed. Because what I was planning next required timing. 2 days later, Celeste called. Your parents came by the property today. My blood ran cold. What? They tried to let themselves in. Said they were the co-owners. But I was here with the inspector. I told them we had documentation showing sole ownership under your name. I exhaled slowly. Did they say anything else? Oh yeah, she said, chuckling. Your mom said you were clearly having a breakdown, and that they were just trying to help him regain his sanity. There it was. The smear campaign. But it didn't matter anymore. Because I had something they didn't know I had. 2 things, actually. 1, a full recording of that attempted break-in, complete with audio. 2, a court date. Because Ava had filed the motion for declaratory judgment that morning, and we had subpoenaed the footage. And that wasn't all. We'd also requested an official psychiatric evaluation for the sake of clearing my name, since they'd begun suggesting I was mentally unwell to neighbors, mutual friends, and even hinted at it in a message Graham sent to Henry's school counselor. It was character assassination, and now it was evidence. That weekend, I took Henry camping. Just us. No phones. No noise. We roasted marshmallows, skipped rocks, and watched the stars through the roof of our tent. Are you still mad at Grandma and Grandpa? He asked as we lay back on our sleeping bags. I'm not mad, I said after a long pause. But I am making sure they can't hurt us again. He nodded like he understood more than I gave him credit for. Then he turned on his side, pulled his blanket up, and whispered, Good. The revenge wasn't going to be loud. It wasn't going to be dramatic. It was going to be airtight, legal, final. And when it landed, they wouldn't even see it coming. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No dramatic marble columns. No jury box. Just a judge's bench, a few pew-like rows of seating, and a single table where Ava and I sat, folders neatly stacked between us. It was a bench trial. No jury, just the judge reviewing our petition for declaratory judgment, along with our motion to dismiss my parents' equity claim. They showed up late. Of course they did. Mom wore her pearl earrings and that outdated navy suit she thought made her look dignified. Dad looked like he'd been dragged in against his will, fidgeting with his cufflinks. And Graham wasn't even allowed inside. He'd been subpoenaed as a witness, but after an incident at the courthouse metal detector where he got into it with security, the judge ordered him to remain outside until called. When the judge finally entered and we stood, I felt my heart thudding in my chest, but it wasn't fear. It was closure, knocking softly on the door. Ava began with calm confidence. She submitted the original mortgage records, with me as primary borrower and my parents as co-signers only. She provided tax records for 10 years, every one in my name. Receipts for repairs, contractor invoices, HOA fees, lawn care services, HVAC replacement, electrical rewiring, all signed and paid for by me. Then came the emails. The 2015 message from my dad to the bank officer, stating his and my mom's intent to remove their names from the title. Clear as daylight. The judge nodded as he read, occasionally adjusting his glasses. Then Ava called me to testify. I told the truth. About the deal I made with my parents a decade ago. How I worked 2 jobs while paying the mortgage. How they promised it was my house and that they'd remove their names. How they never did, but never contributed another cent after year 2. How I paid off the house entirely and maintained it on my own. Then I told the harder truths. About the key they gave my brother without permission. About how he moved in without my consent. About how my parents tried to pick my son up from school using lies. About the attempted transfer from my checking account. And the social media smear campaign that followed when I finally said enough. I submitted the screenshots. The time-stamped login records. The security footage of them trying to enter my home after it was listed for sale, complete with my mom arguing with the realtor, caught loud and clear saying, "This house was never his anyway. He just stayed here. We paid for it." That was the crack in the armor. When the judge asked my parents to speak, they stumbled. My mom, usually composed, tried to spin a narrative about protecting family assets and helping Graham find stability. The judge asked, "Did you live in the home?" "No, but we." "Did you pay property taxes?" "No, but we co-signed." "Did you contribute financially in any way after the 3rd year of the mortgage?" Silence. My dad cleared his throat. "It's not about money. It's about respect." The judge sighed and looked down at his papers. He didn't even ask any more questions. A few minutes later, he ruled. Based on the evidence provided, this court finds that Elliot Carpenter is the sole legal and equitable owner of the property located at 17 Oak Ridge Lane. The lien is hereby removed. The respondent's claim for equity is denied in full. Case closed. Just like that. It was over. Except it wasn't. Because the best part was still coming. 3 days after the verdict, I mailed out letters. Not to my parents. Not to Graham. But to the people who mattered to them. Their church board. Their bridge club. A few old friends they liked to brag about at reunions. Each envelope contained the public court ruling and a polite cover letter. For your records, I thought it was important to clarify recent rumors regarding my home and finances. These court documents speak for themselves. The ripple effect was immediate. My phone didn't blow up, but Ava's did. Because my mother, in a panic, tried to contact the judge, which resulted in a reprimand filed against her by the court clerk for harassment. Graham sent a mass Facebook post claiming he was betrayed by the one person he ever trusted, which only led to more people commenting things like, "Wasn't your name on that fraud claim?" I stayed quiet. The final blow came 2 weeks later. I got a call from the developer. The sale had gone through. Fully approved. Cash in hand. I bought a new house that same month, smaller, cozier, farther out from the town where I grew up, with a big backyard and a lemon tree, because Henry decided he was going to start a lemonade stand next summer. It was ours. Completely. Then, without telling anyone, I changed our phone numbers. A month after the move, Henry came home from school holding a letter. "It's from Grandma," he said, frowning. "The office gave it to me. Said someone dropped it off this morning." The envelope was cream-colored and heavy. My name in cursive on the front. No stamp. No return address. I opened it. Inside was a single page. Neatly typed. "We never thought you'd take things this far. You've humiliated us, embarrassed the family, and chosen money over blood. Just know that when you're alone, we tried. We tried to love you. You made it impossible." I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and dropped it into the trash. I looked at Henry. "Want to go get pizza? Can I get 2 toppings?" "You can get 4. He grinned. A few nights later, we were sitting on the porch of the new house. Crickets chirping, the sky clear and sharp above us. Henry was building a Lego set on a folding table. I was sipping tea, wrapped in an old hoodie. "Are you happy now?" he asked, unprompted. I didn't answer right away. I looked at the yard, the trees, the quiet street. I thought of how far I'd come from the version of myself that always said yes, always played peacekeeper, always folded under guilt. Then I looked at my son, safe, smiling, and free. And I nodded. I think I finally am. When I closed the door on my past, I didn't just walk away from them. I walked toward the life they never believed I could build without them.